What is up, everybody? This is Rebecca Johnson of Supergirl Radio. I'm getting the live stream started here. We'll wait until Morgan joins us to officially get the podcast started. And it looks like maybe Morgan is down there, but just give me a thumbs up when you're ready. I don't want to rush you. Okay, you're good to go. Okay.
Good to go.
Okay. So Supergirl number 41. Everybody's got the doc. Yes.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Well,
make sure I knew where it was.
I have a lot of questions for you, Morgan. So we'll have to figure it out together
as always
as we go through these. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and get started, and we'll talk about Supergirl number 41 as we continue our completest journey through the rebirth era of Supergirl comics.
McGurk! I love typing.
Not mess with my Google Docs, Meeksy.
Supergirl Radio is going live every night of the week. How do you like it? Is becoming a human burrito a plus or a minus? I don't know. It does seem snug.
I mean, they say you are what you eat.
Kira. I love that.
So I do a podcast called Supergirl Radio, and one of our segments is Lena Luthor, Boardroom or Ballroom, because
she looks like a boss in this coat.
Nasty Luthor like a different Luthor? It's not just Lena being mean?
No.
Helen Slater here. So fun to know that you're hosting a podcast called Supergirl Radio.
Yes! Welcome to Supergirl Radio Rebirth, your source for Supergirl comics that started with DC Rebirth. My name is Rebecca Johnson.
I'm Maureen Glennon.
And for this episode of the podcast, we are live and wired to review Supergirl number 41, which was written by Jody Hauser with art by Rachel Stott. Chris Peter was the colorist. Tom Napolitano was the letterer. Letterer is a very hard word to say.
Letterer.
I may need some help with this name. It seems Italian. Carmine Di Domenico.
Yeah, that seems right.
Gian Domenico.
Just very long.
A great name. I love it. And Ivan Placencia, Derek Chu did the variant cover. Bixie Matthew was the assistant editor. Brittany Holzer was the editor. And Jamie S. Rich was the group editor. And the description for this one reads, quote, free of the infection and reeling after the events of Year of the Villain Hellerism, which was great that we read that. The description says Supergirl crash lands in an area being devastated by a catastrophic storm. Suffering from a series of hallucinations and memories of her past, Kara struggles to keep her mind clear enough to save the people she swore to her cousin she'd protect. She's got a lot to prove after endangering Smallville and all of its inhabitants. Will she be able to save everyone, including herself? Or is this the end for our hero? Unquote. Wow, that went like existential real fast.
Ooh.
Is this the end of Supergirl as we know it?
Dun, dun, dun.
Was not expecting it after reading the issue to see that.
No.
I didn't really question Supergirl's existence by the end of it.
I didn't think she was going to like blink out or anything. So I felt pretty confident for her.
So one of the things I had a question for you about in terms of the writing of this one, it was great to see Supergirl back uninfected.
Very nice.
And yeah, a really nice, refreshing take after being stuck in that infected storyline for so long.
Oh, it was like a breath of fresh air. There's no kiss makeup anywhere in sight.
No death metal friends, nothing.
Rock and roll, baby.
But we did get the Batman Who Laughs. He did force himself into this issue.
Up. He was like, remember how messed up I look? And I was like, I do. Please go.
I didn't think I needed him in this one. So
I need a reminder, honestly. Was good.
I was over the Batman Who Laughs. I don't know why he's still hanging around, but he looms large in this one.
He sure does.
Yeah. So the question I had, because the description mentions the hallucinations and the memories of Kara's past. So one of the things I was trying to figure out as I was reading this one was kind of what was the point of the flashbacks. Did you have a take on why the issue kept wanting to refer back to Krypton and Kara's experience on Krypton? It even looked like one panel had Kara with little baby Kal-El. So I didn't know. I was trying to figure that out in my head. Like, I liked the flashbacks. I thought they were great. It's always good to see Kara as a character doing character appropriate, developing things that we can get to know her. But I was just kind of like, what are these doing here?
Yeah, I was a little confused about that as well. And as I was reading, I couldn't help but think of like what the experience would have been like for me as a reader if I hadn't read Hell Arisen. And like the jarringness of going from the in fact, before reading this issue, I went back because I was like, we've taken like a little month hiatus. We like went down a dark path with the Batman Who Laughs and with Lex Luthor getting real swole and everything, and whatever was happening in that series. And so I was like, where had it left us off? And the place it left us off is crazy to have no resolution. Like it's it's like she goes up into the sun and you think maybe that's going to cure her, and then like the voice is like, no, in fact it's not curing you, in fact you're more infected. And it's like, she's like, and then like the next comic is this one. And so I was just like, couldn't stop thinking about the experience of like, if we hadn't taken that detour and read Hell Arisen, like what that would have felt like, how confusing that would have been. If you're only reading the Supergirl title, that's the experience that you have, is like issue 40, issue 41. And then to add in confusing hallucinations into the mix seems unkind. So like you're already reeling, like, how is she uninfected? I don't understand what's happening. How did this all get like resolved? Like, what's going on? And then suddenly like you don't even know if who she's talking to is who she's talking to. It's like, are you already confused? We can make it worse.
Yeah, Kara sort of bounces back and forth between Krypton and reality. So it did seem difficult for me to keep up with. I guess they did, in some ways, they did sort of recap. If you hadn't sped read the last two issues like Daryl had in the chat, which is very helpful, I hope, for you, Daryl, that you did that. But if you had not read it, there was a little bit of a recap just in case you had missed, although I don't think it's good enough really to justify skipping a lot of that stuff in the Supergirl title. I feel like all that should have been together.
I feel like
this recap
issue really did need like a quick recap of what happened in Hell Arisen that got her uninfected. And I would argue, had we had that, maybe we wouldn't have read it, like, honestly, because then we were like, okay, well, yeah, they told us in this one panel what happened and how she got uninfected. So like, we're good now. We can just kind of go into it. But what you go from is the cliffhanger in 40 where she's more infected than ever before, and right into 41 where she's like flying through the sky thinking about Krypton, and you're like, what? And we know she got uninfected, but how? I don't know. And they don't tell us.
Yeah, they do a good job recapping the fact that what she used to be was an infected, twisted version of herself. But they don't, you're right, they don't explain how that happens so that she's not that way anymore. They have a whole thing. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I don't know about like the publication order of this, but was there a gap between 40 and 41? Like that would explain why like 41 is just like, don't worry about it, we're hard launching a new thing.
I guess we could take a couple of minutes and maybe try to find out when the release date was. That shouldn't be too hard to find.
Bunsen, do you know? Bunsen, look at me. Do you know?
Bunsen, I mean, if anybody would know,
if anybody would know, Bunsen goes down to his comic shop weekly, really, to check out the new titles. So
he's got somebody pulling things. He's got a pull list.
He's got a pull it. Bunsen's got a pull list, mostly cat related. Catwoman.
Yeah, it's definitely Catwoman.
Catwoman's his favorite. Yeah, Wildcat, Hellcat from Marvel. You know, he reads it all.
Okay, let me see. I've got 41's publication dates, and let me look at 40. Okay, so the publication date for number 40 was March 25th, 2020.
Oh, starting to see what might have happened.
Okay, so it does seem as though there was a separation in time, because Supergirl number 41 had a publication date of May 26th, 2020. So 2 months later.
So Stanley in the chat says, I think that's about when the pandemic stopped new comics. Stanley, absolutely based on the March 2020.
Yeah, it would have. Yeah.
That was definitely affected by the pandemic. So that does make me kind of understand how jarring it is to go from 40 to 41, because for the reader who was reading, you know, as these were coming out, there had been a little bit of time and distance from issue 40, and obviously Hell Arisen had come out. But I feel like you just can't assume that anybody has read Hell Arisen. You can only assume that they've read this, the title you're currently reading. So I don't know. I think that it needed a little recap of, like, you know how comics do that thing where, like, it's just like, yeah, you know, when I got uninfected because Lex installed that nanobot or whatever it was.
We're not really sure.
Who even cares, honestly? But they just need Perpetua's still out there stuffing people into chairs, but I don't care because I'm free. I don't know anything. I feel like it would have been less jarring if there was, like, literally just a single line of her talking to Crypto being like, was nuts when Lex saved the day, wasn't it, boy? And Crypto was like, arf, arf, never talk about it again.
It didn't even have to, you're right, it didn't have to be much. There is a section of dialogue where Supergirl recaps things for us. She says, quote, I was recently, infected by a monster from another dimension. He made me a monster too, a twisted version of the hero I've tried to be here. But I'm better now, I think. So she could have in that, she could have explained that Lex helped her be uninfected.
Yeah, she could have been like, and this is how I got uninfected, because I feel like as a reader, that's a big question that you want to know. You're like, wait, I mean, like in the last issue, you were really infected, like as more than ever before. And now you're not infected, and it's like no biggie. Like it's very strange. And then when you put the level of, I get what they were trying to do with the hallucinations to kind of show the effect that this infection had on her, and that's kind of like broken her brain in a little bit of a ways where she like can't tell what's real and what isn't. But for a reader, you're confused why she isn't infected if you haven't like followed up, if you're not following the whole universe. And then you're doubly confused as you're reading it, being like, wait, was that real? Or like, who is that person? Wait, why are we going to do that? So it's like, I don't know that I would have started the first issue back with like, the reader won't know what's real and what isn't. It's like the reader is already confused about whether or not they missed a couple issues.
Yeah, I think that's a good read on this, that Supergirl's mind is sort of fractured a little bit because of the infection, and she's having trouble maybe putting things in present day versus past context, or the hallucinations are maybe a consequence or a result of the infection, and maybe something is happening in her Kryptonian super brain that she's having to, I don't know, rewire or reconnect things with her memories. So I think that's a pretty good read on it. I still didn't feel like they were necessary. I think you could have taken the hallucinations out and it would have been the same story. So that's where I was struggling with in terms of the writing of this one, was what was the point of them?
Yeah, I feel like it was to show that she felt guilty and confused about like her time being infected and kind of like mind whammied. But yeah, I agree that like we could have it didn't really even need to be hallucinations. It could have been dialogue. Like, I don't know that the hallucinations were doing much. I feel like the only thing that you could say that hallucinations were doing that was like unique in the story was making her look erratic, so that like the government was like, she cannot be trusted.
Yeah.
There's always like an evil general in every story that's like,
especially a Supergirl story.
I don't care how many puppies she saved, she's bad. And like, you don't need hallucinations to get there, you know? So, and also she actually was just bad. That's the real thing. Like, you don't need to see her accidentally bust a hole in somebody's roof and not even leave any money behind to fix it. To be like, she was just dressed up like another member of Kiss. Like, she was going to go on tour for the rock and roll band. She had the Hot Topic spikes everywhere. Like, I feel like the general would have been justified by just being like, remember what she looked like a week ago? It was crazy. We can't trust her. Instead, they had to be like, well, she hallucinated, and that made her like bust a hole in the house, which made the general not trust her. It's like, we didn't need all that, dude. Did you see what she looked like in the last issue?
Do you remember that time she busted through another roof, which was like a school library, and scared a bunch of children? Like, that's all you need.
They're still fundraising to fix that library.
I like the idea that maybe Supergirl is feeling guilty, as you said, from being infected, and she is maybe also feeling guilty, like survivor's guilt from Krypton. I could maybe see that connection, that she feels guilty in that way on both of those counts. So I could maybe buy into that explanation of it. I guess I was just trying to figure out why, because there was also a thing with the hallucinations in regards to the young lady who had a little baby sister, and there was text. There was like a font that was a little bit different, and I was struggling to sort of figure out what that was. Was that Kara's imagination? Was it the Batman Who Laughs kind of creeping back into it? Why was the font different?
Yeah, I think another thing that I was confused about is that like not all her hallucinations seem to really vary in topic, which is also made it a little bit more confusing for me. So like, she hallucinates Krypton. She hallucinates the Batman Who Laughs in the sky like Mufasa.
That's exactly what that looked like.
Everything you see before you, Kara, is like, no,
is your kingdom.
No, Batman. But she also hallucinates. I think that girl was the girl from Smallville that she was like,
that she tried to infect.
I'll fix you with this infection. The girl was like, I really don't want that. But I also like didn't 100% remember if that was the case, and I didn't look back. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to level with you guys. I didn't check.
I think that's right.
Yeah, but so it's like, I don't know. So the hallucinations also varied. So I was trying to figure out like, okay, I think this is a hallucination, but it's a different kind now.
Yeah, even looking at that scene with the young lady who turns into that girl she tried to infect, the hallucination, I guess, of that moment, the woman who she wants to infect says they're dead like your parents. So it seems to be all connected to Krypton and the hallucinations, or the memories of Krypton, and some of that guilt that Supergirl feels about being a survivor of what happened there. So it's an interesting exploration of that. If it is trying to focus on maybe Kara's survivor's guilt from Krypton, I think that's kind of interesting. But it's still, writing wise, I didn't know if there was like a justification for why it was there.
For the survivor's guilt thing, I would also be interested to know, because again, we've read just Hell Arisen. We didn't continue on. Did like any of the infected people, the infected heroes, die? Because it does feel weird that we are kind of like, a lot of these hallucinations, as you mentioned, is like her guilt, but also her, specifically some of her survivor's guilt. But in this case, she didn't survive anything that anyone else didn't survive. Like, all those heroes were like, well, normal now. Jim Gordon was like, I think I've unlocked something. Jim Gordon puts the mask in his pocket. But like, I feel like all the heroes survived. So it seems strange. I don't know, maybe the rest of the big event ends with some deaths and maybe she's feeling weird about that. I'll never know. Not for me to know.
Well, we did learn that there were 666 of them, and one of
That's
them was
true.
Dog Welder. So maybe Dog Welder bit the dust.
Oh no.
not crying
my-
about
Not
not
my
crying
new
about Dog
favorite
Welder.
character.
So yeah, that's a good point. That I guess for that, I think the guilt is I was turned into a monster.
I was
and
like a
that's-
bit, yeah, I was
yeah.
doing bad things.
But
yeah.
she really kind of wasn't,
Oh,
though. Like, she was still saving people's lives from burning buildings and things. So I don't.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
kind of a
but
tough sell.
She's like, I'm gonna save you now. I'm gonna infect you, but don't worry, you're gonna get such a cool makeover. It's like the girl's like, I don't want it. I see what it did to you, and I'm not interested.
So thank you for investigating the hallucinations with me, because that was one of my biggest questions when I got out of this issue.
Yeah, that was the big one for me that I wanted to talk about, because I did think, just from a like taking a step out of the issue perspective, I think it was too jarring to start a brand new storyline, to not really give you answers to how the other one wrapped up, and then to throw a bunch of hallucinations at the reader where they're like, wait, that didn't happen, right? Like, who is she talking to? That person's not there. Oh, it was a hallucination. Like, you do get that it's a hallucination, and it does give you like an insight into her mind at that time. And they did really need to show how the infection impacted her, emotionally, mentally, as a character. But I do feel like maybe that was for issue 2. I think issue 1, you just got to ease us in. You got to. I felt like I got thrown into the deep end, and I was like, wait, I don't even know how she didn't get it. Blah, blah, blah. Like I drowned.
You just drowned. Yeah, I think the fact that they're to your point, there is kind of a new storyline that's developing with a new character I had never seen before, General Baines.
Wait, do they name her? I actually went back and
yes.
Okay.
It's named let's see. She is named, let's see if I can are you reading the trade?
Of course I am reading the trade.
Okay.
I hope. Wait, was there an editor's note that I missed?
No, I was just gonna name the location or the page of when that happened.
Is it like when she's in the
there's a panel where it's a close-up of Supergirl's ear, and the dialogue says sounds like children, and the right side it says it appears to be her, General Baines.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. I don't know if you see that, but
this is sort of my issue, though, is like they're introducing new characters in like a way that I got confused at the end, where I was like, did they even tell us what this character's name was?
And I just tried to look up General Baines, and I don't see like a Wikipedia entry. I get Bane.
Yeah.
So I can't.
It also is a strange choice to name anybody something that close to a giant, like, important villain character, where it's going to be like, is it a Bane reference? Like, are we supposed to get that?
Yeah, I was kind of wondering if this was like General Baines' first appearance, or if this character had been in something before. So I was really thrown off by this character just showing up, and I was like, I don't know who this is. But I guess we're just supposed to assume it's a military army leader who has a problem with Supergirl, and then that's our new villain, I guess, of this.
What if she turns out to be related to Bane? She's like, actually, the family name is Baines. I don't know why his parents named him Baines, but maybe that's why choice. Maybe that's why he was so angry.
They just half-heartedly named him. They didn't really put a lot of creative effort into it.
Barely even bothered, really.
Okay, so Daryl in the chat says first appearance, as far as I can tell, of General Bane. Yeah, I can't find any more information about this character, so I guess this maybe is the first appearance of this character. So what did you make of this General Morgan? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't get much of this character in this issue. She just seems like really mad. I feel like it's kind of an archetype of like in the superhero comics of like the government general or the army general who like doesn't trust the superheroes, and I feel like it's very much on that page right now. She does show up at the end. She's holding Crypto by his little cape. I feel like that's probably putting undue pressure on his neck, and I don't like it. Arf arf. And she seems to be wearing like a Lexo suit, which
It looks like a Lexo suit. Yeah.
I assume like Lex has some sort of like government contract. I think doesn't that happen didn't that happen in the last season of My Adventures with Superman where he like made a bunch of Lexo suits and then they all kind of malfunctioned?
He did, yes.
So I feel like she shouldn't trust that thing so much, but
it's probably not going to go great for her.
She does seem very confident in it. I will give her that. She's serving a lot of look in that last panel.
I do enjoy that last page. It's a good cliffhanger. So I'll be curious if they explain the Lexo suit there and what her beef with Supergirl is, because she seems to think that Supergirl is adding to the destruction of this hurricane devastation that Supergirl and Crypto go to help with. I don't know why she would think that. It did to me look like Supergirl was helping, but I guess she interpreted it differently.
Because she flew through the roof of one house. Have you met Supergirl? She flies through the roofs of things constantly. Remember that elevator in Catco?
Yeah, at her workplace.
The roof and the elevator she did.
Hopefully it did not rain in the days to come after that, because Catco would just be flooded and water damaged.
In this case, it was raining, which made it funnier for me. I like that you see her fly all through the house to make sure that nobody's in there. And I don't know. I think it would have been nice if she had just put like a little tarp over top of that giant hole, just to be like, and like maybe like a little note that said "My bad, heart, Supergirl." Because that living room's is trash now.
She totally could have. I mean, I guess they'll have insurance, whoever these people are who live here. But
I like the idea that Supergirl's like, well, I mean, it is a hurricane, so like no one's gonna know it's me. It's like Supergirl. Supergirl just hit and ran that house.
I do like the art in that panel where it is showing Supergirl flying through or running through some of these places to see if there's anybody still in the building. I really like that, because one of the things I think is cool is that I can't decide where she starts.
Yes, I think
when she ends, cool. Like you could follow her path all throughout the house in various iterations or different paths. And so I like the idea of trying to figure out where she went first and how she, it's kind of like a little maze. So I did like that, because it did show that she was thorough in trying to find people. But yeah, she did. I mean, leave a hole in the roof of this house.
Yeah, I did. I like that panel because I can feel the motion of how she's like moving through. And I even think, of how we see her super speed on the show, and I could kind of feel that in that panel, and especially the way that they even like layered a different panel kind of a little bit over top of it, so you just sort of feel the motion of her quickly going through the house and being like, oh, okay, cool, I didn't there's not somebody like my bedroom in there somewhere.
Yeah, I enjoyed that. Okay, so are there any other things that you wanted to talk about? I guess what do you think about the new direction of this storyline? Supergirl has found this young lady who has a sister. She's trying to make sure these people are okay. She goes and gets them supplies so that they have everything they need. I guess this is taking place in Florida. So that's kind of a new location for Supergirl. I haven't read many Supergirl comics where it takes place in Florida. So Florida notoriously has a lot of hurricanes that affect that state. Don't live near the ocean is all I'm saying. Maybe
don't do it.
You can get like a beach home, I guess, but maybe not your permanent.
Far inland. You want to be so far inland. You can drive to the beach.
You
don't want to be on the beach. Somebody who lives in New Jersey, take it from me.
My family used to have a place in Gulf Shores, Alabama, and it did get hit by Hurricane Ivan. That was a very interesting experience. We no longer have that place just because it was too much to deal with.
It's like, no,
Um,
thank you.
But if you want to avoid hurricanes, maybe don't live near the beach.
Yeah.
That seems wise. Yeah, so she is now helping some people in Florida. So I guess that's where we are with her. One other thing that I did want to ask you about, Morgan, is she makes things up with crypto. She tells
does.
crypto, "I'm sorry. Can you forgive me?" Do you think that crypto forgave her?
I think he did automatically because he's a good boy. She was quite mean to Crypto when she was infected, and I didn't like her tone of voice with him. But I do think that it was a very genuine apology. I really felt like she felt bad about the way that she had treated. She had like a little flashback of being mean to Crypto, and I feel like that would haunt me, honestly. Like, oh no, Crypto looks sad when I said that to him. I told him he wasn't a good boy. So I feel like it was a very sincere apology, and if I was Crypto, I also would probably accept it.
Yeah, it's cute to see their relationship get back to normal, and I like the idea that when Supergirl goes to get the supplies for this young lady and her baby sister, I think it is, she leaves Crypto behind with them to keep them company and to make sure everything is okay. So I like that he serves a purpose in this issue to sort of be the pet, the therapy pet to make sure everybody's good to go, because there's a concern about the two sisters' parents and not knowing where they are. So I think it's helpful to have Crypto around for that, because nobody can be sad or lonely when Crypto is there. So I really enjoyed that.
Not when you have a good buddy like Crypto.
Yeah, so he does his part very well. Is there anything else story-wise you wanted to talk about before we kind of get into favorite parts of the art?
Yeah, I mean, I think from a story perspective, I appreciate that we kind of have taken a step away from these, from a big comics-wide event. Always love getting clear of those. That's just me. I know some people love them. I don't usually. I often feel like they take over books and then all of the adjacent books that they're near. And then I'm like, I don't care about this, but here I am reading about it. So I was glad. I was like, okay, we're out. We've made it through. We're out of the woods now on the infected storyline. So already I was very relieved. And then to have the story that we're doing right out of that be really grounded in like reality. It's about like there's like a hurricane and she's just helping these two sisters get supplies, and it seems like the villain is just like the military who doesn't understand. It's like I am kind of appreciating that this storyline is more grounded than some of them. It does kind of continue the trend of Rebirth of like, just when a storyline starts, it abruptly stops, and then it pivots into something completely different. And you're like, how many different books has this book been? Many. It's lived millions of lives in the amount of time that we've read it, especially for us, since it's taken us 100 years to get through.
That's mostly user error on that one. We took
That one's a little bit on us, but not all of it is on us.
No. Do you remember when Rebirth had the Omega Men in it?
I do.
That was so long ago that we read that. But it was a thing that happened.
It was wild. I saw Daryl ask a question, which is kind of leads into what I was talking about. Because Daryl asked, was the Eliza reveal with Leviathan ever truly established? There was a storyline that was beginning at the beginning of the trade I have that was about Eliza dying.
Because she blew up in like some explosion. Yeah.
And they found her hand. I don't know.
I forgot
they found her hand. That wasn't an air quote situation. They just really found it.
Because they went into the morgue or something and like made a big deal about her.
Like, we got to get her hand back. It's like, oh my God, you guys. And then there was like a whole thing about like Leviathan, and it is feeling very much like that was dropped just like it was in the TV show.
It's part of the mythology, I think, that you have to do that.
Whenever you mention Leviathan, whenever you start a storyline with Leviathan, know that you'll get no answers and that will be dropped abruptly, never to be spoken of again. And
That's
it seems
how you
like we're
write.
continuing the trend. That's just how you write Leviathan. That's like, when you like when we were watching a Supergirl thing, and sometimes we're like, I don't know if that was character correct. Like, that's what's character correct for Leviathan. Brutal.
Yeah, I feel like that's always what happens with those storylines. So no, I don't think we have gotten back to Eliza Danvers and Leviathan.
And
it
honestly,
could be in a different.
I don't think we ever will.
It could be in a different storyline, in a different title somewhere.
Maybe there was a spinoff somewhere, Leviathan. If somebody was reading at this time when they were publishing these, to let us know if there was like a Leviathan spinoff somewhere that we should have been knowledgeable about. I'm not saying we're going to read it, but just to know.
Shouldn't that have been in the Supergirl title if Eliza Danvers was like all up in that?
You would think, or at the very least, like there should have been a little editor's note, like still wondering about Leviathan, wonder no more. And Eliza Danvers, Leviathan's answers unveiled. Like, I don't know. You gotta give us something.
If they wrote a title that was just like Eliza Danvers and Leviathan, I would read that.
I would read that.
I would subscribe to that.
You wouldn't even really have to sell me on that. It would be like, Eliza Danvers comes back for her hand. Guess what? She's the head of Leviathan now. I mean, also, just for 1 second, getting to the TV show, which we don't talk about all the time anymore. But could you imagine if the reveal of who the head of Leviathan was that it was Eliza?
Chef's kiss.
Beautiful. 10-10, no notes.
It would have made no sense, but I would have been on that ride.
I would have been like, yes, give me a whole nother season of this. Could you imagine if she just like come out, she's like, I'm evil now. I think it would have been great.
I would have enjoyed that.
Mind the Gap, always here to give us some comics knowledge. Mind the Gap says there was a series called Event Leviathan, but I don't think it had anything to do with Eliza.
So where are we supposed to know about Eliza? And because they made it seem like she was dead, but then they revealed she was not dead. So why bring her back from the dead if she didn't do anything?
I guess we'll never know. Daryl also says there is actually a Leviathan spinoff revealing who's behind it, but I don't think Eliza shows up.
What are they doing?
So what are we doing here? What are we all doing here?
Well, we may never know. Okay, so Morgan, do you have any favorite panels or pages in this one that you thought were real standouts in terms of the art?
I actually really liked that. I mean, we were talking about it a little earlier, but that last panel where General Baines is holding poor Crypto by the cape, and you see Supergirl like trying to push herself up in the foreground. I thought that one looked really cool. And really made General Baines seem like pretty bad because, like, anytime anybody threatens Crypto, I like immediately are like, that's a bad apple.
You are evil.
You are just pure evil. I also liked the panel where I think you have it as your background, where Supergirl saves Crypto from, it looks like the roof of a house.
Yeah, I don't have it as an overlay, but it is in my background.
Yeah, it is in your background. I thought that was a really cool panel. Like, you really got the sense of the motion and of her saving Crypto, which obviously she really owed him several at that point. And then I really like the first, I guess it was like the second page after she comes out of that Krypton flashback where she's flying with a bunch of birds, but she like looks kind of low-key mad at the birds. I don't really know. I don't know what's going on there with her.
She's very serious.
She is very serious. She's locked in, and she seems like she is a little bit mad at having to fly in the middle of a bunch of birds, which I get.
They were probably, I mean, birds are kind of messy.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're like messy in the air, but sometimes
One of them is for sure calling right next to her. Maybe she doesn't like that little noisy guy in the corner. I don't know. But I think it's pretty great. I was like, wow, okay, that's a face she's making.
One of the bits of the art in this issue that I wanted to ask about and have a discussion about is for me it's page 7 with the single issues, but it's the visuals of Supergirl's eyes on top of an image.
Yes.
Because, and I wanted to ask you about this because in some of the comics that we have read with the Supergirl supervillain Psi, sometimes that is how Psi is depicted, as like all-knowing eyes in the sky. But I don't think that's what's happening here. So I was kind of curious.
Would be awesome.
It would be awesome if Psi showed up in this title. I would be all about that. I love me some Psi. But it's interesting because in the first time that it happens with like the power lines and the rain and the houses with the grass in there, it looks like she is having a premonition of some kind of General Bane's, like coming in the Lexo suit at the end. But my read on it is either it was used as foreshadowing or it was just the artist's depiction of kind of Supergirl's perspective or her point of view is to like, we're seeing her eyes, but this is what she's seeing. So for me, it was a little bit of a cerebral reach, but I was curious what you made out of those visuals.
Yeah, I kind of took that as like her kind of hallucinating, and then we were kind of seeing what her hallucination was. But I found them like a little bit like trippy. Because we see these kind of like robots. It does kind of look like the Lexo suits. It does look kind of a little bit like what General Bane's is wearing. So I don't know if that was supposed to be premonition or something. I was really confused about that panel. And then, we see the eyes and she's now just seeing the hurricane and it feels like she's kind of like snapped out of it. But I would be very curious about what those robot suits are. Was that like something that she was seeing from Krypton? Is that something she's seeing from like the future? Like,
yeah, it's interesting because to your point about the man who laughs hallucination that she has in the clouds, it sort of looks like that, where she's seeing things up, that she's looking up at. So I don't know. It was really interesting how this issue played with hallucinations or foreshadowing or perspective, point of view kind of thing. So I was unsure if I was reading it correctly.
It's strange too, because when she had in that panel where it's like her eyes and the robots in the background of like these houses, she says Smallville, but I'm not anywhere near there. And it's like, what this is the first time in the issue that I got like legitimately confused. I was like, you're seeing robots and we're seeing Florida. Where is Smallville coming from? Like,
well,
did this happen in Smallville, the robots thing, and I just forgot it?
That's a good question. I have to remind myself that Supergirl does have telescopic vision. She can see from very far away. So maybe she's just looking, she's like seeing things in Smallville as it's happening. But to your point, when did this happen in Smallville?
That was I was like, when I first read it, I was like, is she flashing back to something that happened in Smallville? If so, why don't I remember it? Was it just that like my memory is bad? Always possible. And this happened in Smallville, and then I was like, no, maybe she's, like you said, telescopic vision. Maybe she's seeing into Smallville and seeing that they are currently under robot attack. But then she just kind of like rubs her eyes. She's like, all better. And I was like, oh, well, I guess Smallville isn't under robot attack.
So maybe not a use of her supervision.
Because I was like, if she had like a flash of Smallville being under robot attack, and then her reaction was like, I guess I should just check out the local grocery store. I feel like that'd be weird.
That would be weird.
So I was like, yeah, what's going on with that was a very strange one where I was like, I don't really know what they're getting at. And I feel like part of it has to be that at some point robots attacked Smallville maybe in this run, maybe in a different run, and I just don't remember it, and that's what she's flashing back to. But it wasn't clear for me as a reader. But
yeah, I'm uncertain whether it's a flashback or if it's foreshadowing of what's to come.
It could be, because at the end of the issue, General Baines has a suit with a very similar color scheme to those robots she saw. So maybe it was like a premonition of the future.
Yeah, so I guess we'll see what General Baines is up to in the next issue. We don't have that many issues of this run on Supergirl left, so I'm kind of curious to see where it goes and how it maybe ends.
Stanley's just messing with us in the comments now. Stanley says, "Sounds confusing. You better read the whole series again."
Wow, I don't think we can commit to that, Stanley. That might be difficult.
It took us like 4 years to just read it the one time.
You can go back and read all of our episodes, or listen to all of our episodes and read it for yourself if you would like to go through the entire series.
You can always relive the magic.
Those episodes of Supergirl Radio are there for you to enjoy. Well, Morgan, what did you think about this one? Did you like it? Did you dislike it? What are your thoughts?
I thought it was a little confusing, but what else is new from my experience with Rebirth? That has been across the board. A lot of my experience with like, what are we doing now? But I do think it was an improvement from the infection storyline, if I have to be honest. Like, getting out of that infection storyline, so nice to not have to deal with that. I like that the story seems to be going in a more grounded, sort of like a smaller scale drama versus like Perpetua is going to take over the whole world, and she's like, I have to get groceries for these two sisters. I like the grocery level problems sometimes. It felt like a nice little palate cleanser. And I'm interested to see where they're going with her sort of like PTSD and her hallucinations. And so would I have structured the first issue back like in a confusing way where there's like a lot of hallucinations right off the bat? No, as a reader experience, it's not the best, but I think it is certainly a step up from the infection storyline, and I'm interested to see where it's going to go, because it feels like it's at least going in a direction I'm more interested in.
Yeah, I always like the Supergirl title better when it shockingly focuses in on Supergirl instead of a bunch of characters who invade her title or some side quests that don't really matter. So I would rather see Supergirl interact with the humans that she encounters. So I think it's a better direction, especially after the infected storyline took up so much of the Supergirl title.
Now, I have a quick question, because I see Kenny in the chat says, issue 42 is the last issue of this run of Supergirl. DC has not released a Supergirl ongoing series since. Is the next issue the last issue?
I couldn't remember. I thought we had more, but Kenny may be right. This may be this might have been the penultimate issue.
The penultimate issue of Rebirth?
The Supergirl title during the Rebirth era.
What a strange way to have this run go out. I don't, okay.
So I wonder if issue 42 is the end. Did the creative team know that it was the end? Are we going to get a finale of some kind, or is it just going to be a cliffhanger? Probably a cliffhanger.
Yeah, it seems like Daryl in the chat says next issue is the last issue of Rebirth.
Okay, confirmation.
And Mind the Gap says Supergirl mostly appeared in Superman and Action Comics after Woman of Tomorrow.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I have to say I feel even more upset that the infected storyline hijacked her book now. For them to just bring it back and then be like, okay, you get 2, wrap it up. It's like, wrap what up?
Maybe they should have just wrapped up the because now they've started something new, but maybe they should have just like come out of the infected storyline and they're like, Supergirl's back to normal, the end.
The end. Yeah, the end. I feel like that would have made more sense. Maybe it would have made me more angry that that's the storyline we would have gone out on, but I don't know.
Especially when the Eliza Hand thing was like right there.
And they had just started like a Leviathan thing right before the infected. Rebirth has been the most insane switches in storylines and like the vibes and like the narrative priorities of like this whole story that I've read in a long time. It's just like every 5 issues or so, it's literally just a brand new book. I know that this happens a lot and that like writers cycle in and artists cycle in, but usually there's like a similar vibe to it. Just like every 5 or 6 issues, you're just reading a whole different comic.
I mean, there was a whole section of Rebirth where she was in space for a long time, and she
Yeah.
had an axe. She was like an axe queen. And she
Was
met-
Rogel Zar in this?
that was Rogel Zar and Gandello. You remember Gandello?
Gandello.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like she's getting groceries for somebody, but like 15 issues ago, she was off in space fighting Gandello. Like, how do these things exist in the same book? I feel like the Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow way of storytelling, where they know how many issues they have going in, they tell a self-contained story, and then they get out of there. I know it can't happen all the time, but boy, is that a better like sit down reading experience than something like this, where like when you are reading it in the collected edition, it becomes even more apparent these like wild swings in like tone back and forth, where you're like, okay, we got out of Gandello and now Leviathan's here. Okay, cool. No, we don't care about Leviathan anymore. Now she's infected.
We're gonna pair Supergirl up with Batgirl, and they're gonna go to the Phantom Zone. We're gonna do that for a little while. That was like right at the beginning.
Legitimately forgot about that.
And Kara's father is gonna be Cyborg Superman, and he's gonna zombify some of the Kryptonian people, whatever.
God.
That's all part of this same title. So I agree with you. The Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow method, even though it was only 8 issues, it's a more digestible, satisfying user end experience than something like this. I actually, I was trying to explain Comet the Superhorse to somebody at work like a week or so ago. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to bring Woman of Tomorrow in. So that this maybe will make some more sense. Like, I'm not making the concept of Comet the Superhorse up. It's like in a comic book. But I was able to give somebody this book and say, here's a Supergirl story. You can read this in maybe one sitting, couple of sittings, and you can read a Supergirl story, and it's a good one. And you don't have to go through 42 issues of just total chaos.
And it's not going to be I think I've read enough comics where I've got big collected editions, and you can kind of see this kind of stuff happen. And I've picked up weeklies and stuff like that. I've got them as they come out, and you can kind of see stuff like that where storylines start to shift and change, and like characters start out on the ground and they go into space and then they come back into the earth, and like, okay. But I think my issue with Rebirth is that every storyline that they brought up, it felt like they never finished it. Like every storylines feels unfinished when they hop to the next thing aggressively. And so if they had sort of put a bow on like she's out into space and then she has like this character arc and then she comes back down to earth and now she's in a different storyline, but like you felt like the previous one had ended organically, like there was a beginning, middle, and an end to that story. Now it's on to the next thing. I feel like it wouldn't be so abrupt, but it feels like these stories, they get halfway in, they get to the beginning, the middle, the beginning, the middle. There's never an end. And I feel like that is my big critique of Rebirth. It's just that they don't ever really wrap things up. There's no real arc. You're just kind of on to the next.
And then even if they have an arc and they want to revisit it at some point, because like they had a whole story with Ben Rubel, and then they forgot about Ben Rubel for a long time, and then like one issue wanted to bring Ben Rubel back, but then nobody ever did anything with Ben Rubel after that. So it was like they wanted to tell a story, then they dropped it, and then they were like, well, maybe we could go back to that, but then they had no interest in it. So that seemed to happen a lot. So I find it really dissatisfying. It's interesting to look through these issues in terms of like Supergirl mythology and what people have tried with the character, but as a reader, it's it's a lot of nonsense.
As a reader, the experience is just all over the place. And it's one of those things where I could see if you were picking it up as it was coming out, you're reading it along, you're just like, I just want to know what's going on with Supergirl. I want to check in with my girl. I want to see what adventure she's going into. But I couldn't imagine, like, if somebody was like, why do you love Supergirl? Give me somewhere to start. I cannot imagine handing them Rebirth and
You're
being like,
getting
this will make perfect sense to you. Like, that's cool, right?
That is going to make somebody hate the character of Supergirl. So I would not recommend it. But yeah, so I guess looking at this from the penultimate issue perspective,
Yeah,
it's
wild.
It's difficult to digest. But I guess we'll see how it wraps up in issue number 42 when we get there. And we'll talk about it next time on Supergirl Radio. But I think for this episode, we're going to start to wrap things up. If you would like to contact Supergirl Radio, you can post a comment on our website at supergirlradio.com. You can email us at supergirlradio@gmail.com. You can like us on Facebook and follow us on X and Instagram, all at Supergirl Radio. If you like what we do, we encourage you to give us a rating and write us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. Supergirl Radio is part of the DCTV Podcast Multiverse of Color Network. So if you want to check those things out and see what everybody else is up to, you can go over there. You can hang out with us as we go live and wired on Tuesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern on the DCTV Podcast YouTube channel and the Supergirl Radio Facebook page if you would rather watch it there. DCTV Podcast also has a TeePublic store, so if you're in need of a new DCTV or DC Comics or Supergirl related t-shirts, tank tops, sweatshirts, magnets, tote bags, pins, phone cases, pillows, or stickers, go to supergirlradio.com and click on the TeePublic store link at the top of the page.
And since Supergirl number 41 referenced Smallville, remember, out of nowhere, and we were confused, we have some Smallville high school designs in the DCTV Podcast TeePublic store that we would like to suggest.
Yeah, some variations on the Smallville High School Crow logo and mascot. So I think that's pretty cool. So if you want to act like you went to Smallville and that you were part of Clark Kent and his class of when did he graduate on the show?
Oh,
like
my
2004 maybe? 2005. When would he have, what would have his graduating class have been? Maybe 2000.
Class of like I don't know. Was he? No, he was in. When did he go to college? Was it like 2000?
I feel like the show started not too long after 9/11. So I feel like, did it start in 2001?
Maybe. I think so. So
Yeah.
maybe he was in college in like maybe he was a class of 2005.
So if you want to pretend you were part of Clark Kent's graduating class, we have Smallville alumni.
Gonna date you though.
It is gonna date you. You're gonna feel old by that time. But we do have those designs in the TeePublic store if you want to check them out. We would also like to thank our legion of super sponsors for supporting the Supergirl Radio Patreon. These people are Michael, Anne Marie, Yvonne, Nicola, Abby, Miriam, Nicole, Brian, Ethan, Mujuba, Annie, Rachel, and Kit. If you would also like to become a legion of super sponsor, you can go to patreon.com/Supergirl Radio. Morgan and I will be releasing our review of the first Joker film. We discussed it and had a very interesting conversation. I think I enjoyed it maybe a little more than Morgan did, but it's a good conversation. Mm-hmm. And now that I have recently, for the first time, watched Folie à Deux, I made it through. Now
Wait, so you've seen
I watched it last night.
Okay.
Because I was like getting ahead because I knew we were going to talk about it for the Supergirl Radio Patreon. So we're going to discuss Joker and then Joker 2, Folie à Deux.
Yes.
And so I wanted to get ahead of it. And so now I'm super curious to hear your thoughts, Morgan, on what you think about it.
I cannot wait. I'm holding back on Folie à Deux because I want to be as fresh as humanly possible in my mind when we talk about it. I want to bring my freshest perspectives to Folie à Deux. Also, I think it's probably going to be insane. So you want to get like the fresh reactions of like, what?
I wanted to give myself, because I like to watch things
you like to watch them twice. I like to watch them once and just fire off an ill-formed opinion. That's my promise to you guys.
I mean, I guess both of them are valid ways to review something.
Sure.
But yeah, I'm very curious to know your thoughts about Folie à Deux because it was something. All right,
I'm excited.
If you would like to follow me on the interwebs, I'm in a couple of places. I'm on a platform called Vero True Social at Derby Kid over there. You can follow me on Instagram at the Derby Kid. You can subscribe to my personal YouTube channel, youtube.com/duckmilkprod. I also do a travel blog with my brother over at Oasis Broom on all the social media. So that's where you can find me on the interwebs.
And you can find me at various places at Mojotastic. And you can also find me as a co-host on the Legendary Ladies podcast. We just had a really fun interview with author Fiona Fenn about her novel, The Crack at the Heart of Everything. And our next topic is TBD. We have a couple of things that we have been tossing around talking about. So the best way to follow the Legendary Ladies podcast is subscribe to our YouTube channel at the Legendary Ladies or on iTunes or whatever podcast app. And then when the episodes pop up, you'll always get them.
That is the best way I have found because then it's like a little surprise that pops up in my podcast
feed. New one.
So definitely go check out the Legendary Ladies. You all always do a great job. Well, that is going to do it for this episode of Supergirl Radio. But until next time, I'm still Rebecca Johnson.
And I'm still Morgan Glennon. And we look forward to reading more Supergirl comics.
McGurk! I love typing.
Not mess with my Google Docs, Meeksy.
Supergirl Radio is going live every night of the week. How do you like it? Is becoming a human burrito a plus or a minus? I don't know. It does seem snug.
I mean, they say you are what you eat.
Kira. I love that.
So I do a podcast called Supergirl Radio, and one of our segments is Lena Luthor, Boardroom or Ballroom. Because
she looks like a boss in this coat.
Nasty Luthor like a different Luthor? It's not just Lena being mean?
No.
Helen Slater here. So fun to know that you're hosting a podcast called Supergirl Radio.
Yeah!